Hello, so I'm back, and in this podcast, we're going to talk about my, I hate to say hatred of anything because I don't like to be negative, but I am going to do a review of, not necessarily a review, but my opinion of the Assassin Creed game Valhalla. So, stay tuned because it is not going to be a pleasant opinion. Valhalla, to make things quite simple, was the game in the Assassin's Creed world that I absolutely hated the most. And this is probably going to shock a lot of fans because there are a multitude of fans out there who absolutely loved Valhalla. Absolutely loved it. It actually was Ubisoft's highest grossing Assassin's Creed game. If you're not aware, Assassin's Creed, the franchise, is Ubisoft's most successful video game franchise ever. They even tried to turn it into a movie. The movie sucked. We're not going to get into that, but it is incredibly lucrative for Ubisoft. Now, why do I hate the game that so many other people love so much? Well, let's get into it. So the first couple of things that I really want to start off with to kind of just sum up why I genuinely did not like Valhalla as an Assassin's Creed game is, one, it's boring. The gameplay is awkward. It's difficult to fight. There are two versions of gameplays where you play one open world version and one more adventure RPG style. I didn't like the graphics. And essentially my biggest pet peeve with Assassin's Creed is that it's not an Assassin's Creed game. So let's break it down, right? Okay, well, actually, before I break it down, I'm going to drink a little bit of coffee because it's kind of early while I'm recording this because I don't know why, but Assassin's Creed game, Valhalla, was just on my mind at 6 o'clock in the morning for some reason. So I'm going to drink some coffee. Okay, so I thought the game was boring. And this comes down to just what I think it has more to do with expectation than anything else. I don't necessarily think the game itself is boring. I don't. What I think going in, or what I thought going into the game, or what I expected going into the game wasn't what I got. And because it wasn't it didn't meet my expectations, it got a completely different reaction out of me than it would have had I expected it. And the biggest thing about this, because I've seen other reviews and things like that, sorry guys, I got my window open because it is really warm, so if you hear any of that like background noise, it literally is the street outside of my place. But the what was I saying? That's how easily my thought process goes. But my expectations for the game, so when I watch other YouTubers talk about Valhalla, because there's some disparaging reviews of Valhalla on YouTube, which is not in line with how popular the game is and how much it's sold, but core Assassin's Creed game fans, and I don't want to group us all together because we all like different things and we like different games and we like them for different reasons, and like I said, Valhalla is the best-selling Assassin's Creed game to date. So a lot of people like it, but when you hear YouTubers and gamers talk about what they did not like about the game, oftentimes I think the one thing for me that's completely missed in regards to the game itself, and I think maybe it has to do with because it wasn't just Valhalla, and we'll get into that in a second, but Assassin's Creed game fans have been saying for a long time now that the Assassin's Creed games have been going downhill. The franchise has been going downhill. And I, being absolutely obsessed with the game since maybe like 2010, have been really, really reluctant to agree with it or acknowledge it. I've kept my blinders on when it came to Assassin's Creed as a franchise because I just don't want to believe that the games are getting worse or repetitive or however it goes. But when Valhalla came out, I kept my blinders on for a really long time, and then when Valhalla came out, I couldn't keep my blinders on anymore. It was clear that the Assassin's Creed franchise was no longer Assassin's Creed. And I think that has to do with some of the criticism with the story itself, like the Assassin, and I'll actually do a podcast where I just kind of go over the overview of Assassin's Creed franchise in general. And we'll get into all that, break that stuff down. But as far as the Assassin's Creed like story, it's always been convoluted. It's always been a little bit weird. And that's kind of why it was hard to adapt to a movie, because it really kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But whatever, you get over the fact that the actual story behind Assassin's Creed is convoluted and weird and kind of doesn't make any sense anymore, because the games themselves are so much fun. Playing as an assassin it's the best assassin game you could possibly have. It's so much fun, and it's just a world of its own, right? I think over time, it's been a long time now. It's been almost over 15 years that these games have been going, that same story has been going. At some point, I think Ubisoft wanted to branch out. They wanted to get away from the typical Assassin's storyline, and they wanted to do something different. And I think that was the goal with these last 3 Assassin's Creed games. So I wanted to actually hit on this maybe a little bit later, but I'll talk about it. I'll actually talk about it right now. I'll talk about how Valhalla actually wasn't the first game like of that, of the way that Valhalla, the gameplay and the story and everything like that wasn't their first foray into this kind of game. They've actually done it before. But with the games that they've done it before, the games that they did this with before, I didn't actually hate those games as much as I have with Valhalla, and we'll talk about why. But it kind of really started with Syndicate back in 2015 is the first time that Assassin's Creed really kind of decided to do this open world sort of gameplay with the game. The thing about it with Assassin's Creed Syndicate is Assassin's Creed Syndicate was still very much a Assassin's Creed game. You still were assassin, you still play as an assassin. I personally didn't love the gameplay. I didn't love the way it was set up, because it was like, I don't even know if you call it, I think it's called open world, but it's like you had these missions that you would do all around the city that played into a larger storyline, but it wasn't like just one main distinct story. So it was like these little missions that you would do on the side, and it literally confused me so much that I ended up finishing the game, and I still was confused if I finished the game, because a lot of open world games, they count missions, side missions that you would do, and how far along you've progressed in the game. Whereas a traditional, main story, non-open world game, it's just you follow one main story. You go from one, I guess you call it levels, one level to the next level to the next level, and so forth and so on. So it's like levels, and you've gotten to the end of the game when you literally get to the end of the game. It's not like that with open world games. Open world games have these weird side missions. Not weird, I don't want to say weird because I'm like judgy. Sounds very judgy. Some people love open world games. I do not. I find the majority of the side missions that you have to do in open world games to be boring and pointless. I think the best kind of example of what I mean by this is actually, I reviewed it in my unpopular opinions video, where I talk about how I did not like the game Red Dead Redemption, which is like the most quintessential open world game I think ever. And you do have the main story, and it does take you through the main story, so it's not as confusing. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, right? But because it's an open world game, you can spend hours and hours and hours not playing the main story and not getting to the next point in the main story, because you have all of these. You could just roam the world, it's like it's just roaming the world. And I don't think Assassin's Creed Syndicate was quite that open world. You had, I don't even know if it was considered open world technically, because you did have missions that you had to do, and you had to do the missions. I don't really think you could just like roam around. You couldn't go into like bars and sit down at bars and, get into fights with people and things like that. So I don't know if it was a true open world game, but I didn't love the idea of these side missions that kind of contributed to the percentage of how much of the game you finish. And then when you're done with the percentage of all of the side missions, then you're done with the game. It was really weird to me. Red Dead Redemption was different because it had that main story, that middle, beginning, end, but you were allowed to roam the world for as long as you wanted to roam the world. You never got pushed to do the next thing in the main story, to push the story along, because it was like living as a, part of this game. And so, whenever you got to your end, you got to your end. But in the meantime, you could just shave and, bathe and go rob, a store, or go sit in a bar and have a drink, or just ride around on your horse and do all these side missions for forever before you decided to do the next thing to get you to the next point in the main story. I found it really boring, and I found it really unnecessary. There are points of the game that were part of the main story that still I found absolutely unnecessary and boring. But I want to get into that because this review isn't about Red Dead Redemption. It's just kind of like why I don't love open world games. And so that is essentially what Valhalla does. It allows you to play this open world version of the game. And then it also has this main story that's more in line with like an RPG style, as opposed to even an adventure style game, because it is so much, especially specifically with the beginning of the game, there's so much of it that is, just story, exposition. You play a little bit and then the story takes over, and then you have to wait and you have to watch. And I was never a fan of RPG style games either. I actually avoided them like a plague. I don't know if RPG games are as popular anymore. If somebody's out there who's like, loved RPG games, you could probably comment and let me know. I don't see as many of them. Really, open world games have really taken a hold of, gaming at the moment. Video game, the video game world. So, not a fan of open world games, not a fan of RPG, and Valhalla mixes those two styles of play quite readily in Valhalla. And then you also have this kind of adventure style of gameplay with Valhalla, and you don't play as an assassin. But again, like I said, the last 3 games that Assassin Creed had come out with, starting with Origins in 2017, and then Odyssey in 2018, and of course Valhalla 2021 is really where it started. If you go back to Origins, again, not really playing as an assassin. It's more of an adventure game. And I think the reason that Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla became so popular was because they're just typical adventure games, And like I said, when I started this podcast, had I been aware of what Valhalla was, I don't think my expectations would have been what they were. And then my disappointment with the game would have been what it is. Because if I look at it, I don't think Valhalla is a bad adventure game. I don't. It's just not what I was expecting for an Assassin's Creed game. But again, they did that with the last 2 Assassin's Creed games as well. So it was clear they were trying to move in that direction and move away from the assassin story and playing as an assassin and make them more just adventure games, right? Assassin's Creed fans who are like super, into the franchise as Assassin's Creed have voiced disappointment in the fact that, the Assassin's Creed franchise is getting away from that. But at the end of the day, there has been 15 plus years of Assassin's Creed game that you can always go back and play whenever you want to. And maybe Assassin's Creed franchise will get back to allowing you to play as an assassin, as opposed to just general open adventure game style. But Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla was definitely that. And in fact, the games themselves, Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, were so similar that I get them confused. I literally get it confused. I have Origins, I have Odyssey, and I bought Valhalla. I have not gotten through any one of those games because I was so disappointed in the fact that you don't get to play as an assassin. That is not an Assassin's Creed game. It is an adventure game that they tagged on the Assassin's Creed moniker, because they know it was going to be really popular and get the attention that it needs to get. But essentially, they're not Assassin's Creed games. Origin is the one that you play in ancient Egypt. Odyssey you play in ancient Rome, and Valhalla, of course, is, Vikings. So they're all very similar to me because they're all in ancient times, and the gameplay is very similar. And it's just kind of hard to tell them apart. And even like the graphics and things like that for Valhalla, to me, seemed very like mid 2000s. It didn't seem very modern. I thought the gameplay and how to fight and things like that was very awkward. Sorry about that. Again, the window is open because it is summer, and of course, loud cars and loud motorcycles happen in the summer. But anyway, so yeah, it just, you go in expecting one thing because it has the Assassin's Creed title, and you come out, you get a different thing. So for me, it was a disappointment. I didn't love it. I know a lot of other people loved it, but it's just how I felt about it. The best era, in my opinion, of Assassin's Creed games would have been between 2010 and 2014. The reason I love Assassin's Creed game is because you get to play as an assassin, and it's just fun. Assassin's Creed games, they're fun. They were fun. Even outside of the story, because like I said, the story was convoluted, and it just got more convoluted as the years went on. But you left that at the wayside, because the fact of the matter is, it was just so much fun playing as an assassin. And then if you didn't want to continue with that, if you wanted Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla to be different, then just make them Ubisoft adventure games. I don't know why you have to stick the Assassin's Creed moniker on them at all. And then this whole process of turning every game into like this open world style game, I think it really kind of just started with people, because games, the graphics and the worlds became so large that during like normal, linear games, a lot of people would like want to explore the worlds, right? And and because the worlds were just so big and beautiful, and I get that. And I think video game designers caught on to that, and then they started to allow you to explore the world a lot more, right? I remember the first time playing, and it kind of reminded me of that open world style, even though it wasn't, because you always got stopped before you got too far gone. But I can't remember which. I can't remember. I think it was Assassin's Creed 2. It was Assassin's Creed 2. Let me look it up. I think it was Assassin's Creed 2. Hold on. No, it was Assassin's Creed 3 that allowed you to play as Connor. And he had to go out in the woods, and he had to like hunt, but it was part of the game. Like, you had to do it in order to progress through the game. And I thought it was like the most boring thing ever. And it reminded me of those those like open world missions where you have to go out and you have to find 10 bunnies and hunt a fox. And I remember being so bored with having to try to find whatever it was that they told me I needed to hunt, because I needed to learn how to, hunt and feed myself and all that stuff. And I was like, oh God, this is so boring. And it was kind of like the first kind of like resemblance of like an open world like style, and I was like, oh, don't do that. But they didn't. They kept stuck with the linear sort of gameplay in Assassin's Creed, and then they got to Syndicate, and it was like their real first foray into it, and I was kind of like my eyes wide open with Syndicate. But again, you still got to play as an assassin, and it was still, that part of it was fun. And then you get to Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, where they just kind of let go of the assassin's story altogether, and it's just basically an adventure game that you play. So as an adventure game, I'm not actually saying that it's a bad game at all. I think it's a bad Assassin's Creed game, but if you like adventure games, and regardless if you like Assassin's Creed games or not, I think you will enjoy it. I just wanted an Assassin's Creed game, and that's not what I got. So I think amongst a large group, and I don't know if it's really a large group of Assassin's Creed fans, or just a very small, loud group of Assassin's Creed fans who consistently voice their dismay of where the franchise has gone. Maybe, watching this video, I might get a good consensus of like how large the fan base, or how many people in the fan base actually really do find it kind of disparaging that Assassin Creed has gotten away from allowing you to really play as an assassin when that's genuinely, essentially what we love about the game. So that's pretty much what I don't like about like Assassin's Creed and the franchise and where it's going, and what I don't like. Specifically, I don't like Valhalla. I specifically don't like Valhalla. It incorporates too much of what I already don't like about video games into one video game. Again, Odyssey and Origins were similar in that it was a non-Assassin's Creed game, but it was more adventure, but it wasn't that RPG open world sort of quality to it. And I really didn't like the graphics. I really don't like what they're doing with the graphics as far as like, Assassin's Creed games always in the past have been very realistic. And like with, and the graphics just got better and got more realistic. And then with Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, it's very cartoonish almost with like the color and the, and I don't like the fighting. To be quite honest with you, I get it. It's ancient world game, so you can't, you have to use axes, and you have to use bows, and you have to use all these things, but at the end of the day I really don't love it. I don't love it. I was going to give it a go. I was like, let me go ahead and play Valhalla again and give it another go and see if I can separate myself from it being an Assassin's Creed game, and see if I could really enjoy it just as its own separate adventure style RPG sort of game experience. And I might try that again, because my goal is to get through all Assassin's Creed games. But I genuinely think if Assassin's Creed continue with this trend of not playing as an assassin and not being an assassin, then I will have to say goodbye to the franchise and just continue to go back and play the games that did allow you to play as an Assassin's Creed before 2015. All right, so that is my review of Valhalla and why I absolutely hated it. And leave your comments below. Again, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can comment, like, share, subscribe. If you go over to my Spotify page, you can take part in polls and comment as well. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye.